As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller. Today, we are going to talk about love. In fact, we're talking about love as medicine. We often hear that exercise is medicine, and it turns out so is love. So we're going to talk about the science between love and well-being and why love isn't just for Valentine's Day. It's a powerful health behavior. So today I have a guest who I've had on before. Her name is Olivia Ellis, and she is a PhD student in positive psychology. I just love Olivia. I ran into her at a convention this summer, and it just sparked how much I love hearing her information and hearing about her research. So Olivia is going to help us explore the groundbreaking research on the psychology of love and how it impacts our physical and our mental wellness so that we can give you some strategies to infuse love into your daily life and hopefully boost your health. So Olivia, I'm going to bring you in and have you introduce yourself. How you doing?
Hi, Angie. It's good to be back. And I know it's so good to reconnect in person. And I was feeling the benefits of, our really high quality interactions, meeting in person. And so it's good to be back and good to see you again.
Yeah. And to talk about love. So, I know that is such a big part of the research that you're doing. And I find it super fascinating because we talk about love just in loose terms. I love food, or I love going to this restaurant, or I love this person. But what about love as medicine? There's a saying that love is as vital as food and water. And it's kind of a bold statement. And I think so is love as medicine. So what are kind of the physiological mechanisms behind love's impact on our health?
Totally. And I think what you're mentioning there, for the longest time, there's been a huge delay in the research on love for mostly what you've been mentioning, right? That we use the term love very loosely in the English language. And it means in different languages, they use the term love. They have different terms for, describing love for a family member, describing love for a romantic partner. And so we also in the English language use the term love to refer to, I really love my favorite food. So there was a real delay in a lot of the research on love because it was hard for researchers to really conceptualize. But when they started diving into the research, they really took it step by step, thinking, okay, well, how do we differentiate friendship versus liking someone? How do we differentiate friendship from a romantic partner, or from a really passionate physical connection to deep love, right? So how do we differentiate these concepts? Now, when we're looking at love, there are, and how researchers are defining it now, and how it can affect someone's health, we can think of it through really three main mechanisms. And one being, looking at like the physiology of someone, the biology. How is it affecting them within their physiology? And one of the concepts that we'll talk about today, called positivity resonance, says that love can actually improve what's referred to as vagal tone. And when I'm referring to vagal tone, I'm referring to, our brain has this network of cranial nerves that communicate from the brain throughout the rest of the body. They innervate these, different organs. They help out with different systems. And the largest one is cranial nerve 10, also referred to as the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve even helps to coordinate the parasympathetic nervous system. So it helps to, calm the mind and body. And so social connection, even at its very core, helps to improve what's referred to as vagal tone. These really high quality interactions that we're now referring to as love can actually improve our health. And so, number one, we have this connection of love, how it can affect our biology, our physiology, social
Can I
isolation.
can I interject there real quick? It's interesting too when you talk about the vagus nerve because everywhere we read now, right? Everybody is talking about the vagus nerve. Everybody is, I studied about it in yoga. I talk about it in therapy. And it's interesting because there's all this research and to your point, that whole positivity resonance and how, love can improve our vagal tone. And so there's just, I feel like you could talk an entire episode on that. I know that that's a heavy, meaty topic, but I think that you did a good job of just saying, hey, love is really important to our physiology. And then you're going to name two other components. But I had to pop in there with the vagus nerve because, again, there's so much research on it. So,
And it's really remarkable because, this is something that can be worked on, but it's different than, other work that people might do that might be more visible from the outside, right? Because if I say, if I'm doing bicep curls at the gym over an extended period of time, people might notice a change in, my physique. But when we do exercises for vagal tone, such as even focusing on really high quality interactions, people might not necessarily be able to see that from the outside. But it can be so important for our health and well-being. And it's just really interesting that some of the research that's coming out is referring to how high quality interactions can even improve vagal tone, and they can even be helpful for inflammation. So the lacking social connection has been shown to be related to, similar levels of inflammation as someone who's physically inactive. And so we have all these processes in our body that, when we're lacking social connection, it can be challenging on our health and well-being.
right.
But on the other side, social connection in and of itself, really high quality moments can be a protective factor, which is also really powerful and empowering to think about.
Well, and I think we're going to talk about too the loneliness factor. But before I hop ahead to that, because you're right, high quality social interactions those could be simple. I mean, you could go to the store and somebody could say, here, you only have two items. Go ahead and go in front of me. Or, a car could let you pass. I'm not saying that that's a high quality social interaction, but it is a feel good moment in humanity where you go, okay, I have hope for humanity. Like people do nice things or people go out of their way or somebody's in front of you at Starbucks and they pay for your order. Again, I'm not saying those are high quality social interactions, but I think that anytime we know that people are thinking about us or that they're doing a good deed, isn't that kind of equivalent or not?
Totally, right? So these high quality interactions in the literature, it essentially argues that these high quality interactions could stem from anywhere. Oftentimes, when we think about love, we think about romantic partners or close friends or family members. But a lot of the love research is heading in the direction of really love could be a high quality experience that we have anywhere at any point at any time, even strangers in a non romantic way, but just being a really high quality interaction. And so when we're thinking about how it affects our health, our biology is one, but it can also affect our psychology. So like social connectedness or really high quality interactions can be a huge source of meaning, right? So when researchers ask people, what are sources of meaning in your life, typically these really high quality, the relationships in our lives tend to be one of the top reasons. Or things that provide meaning, these relationships. And these same relationships that we commonly think of in terms of loving relationships, if someone's in a romantic relationship, friendships, family members, they can also affect the behaviors that we engage in, right? So if someone is smoking, if someone's engaging in physical activity, if someone is eating proper nutrition. And so the relationships in our lives, and even when we're thinking about changing a behavior, these relationships can play a key role in whether we adhere to these behaviors, whether we even want to change the behavior to begin with. So when we're thinking about how the connections in our lives can affect our health, these are three mechanisms. So at the straight to the biology, thinking about the psychological effects, and then also the behaviors that we engage in.
Well, and also on the whole behavior thing, I mean, what is the old saying that you are kind of the sum of the five people you hang out with the most? And so I think that makes a lot of sense. It's the physiology or the biology, but it's also the psychology because when we are socially connected, we feel good. I mean, I literally sometimes will, when I'm writing on my goals for the week, I'll make it a goal that I have to call at least one friend or I have to set up at least one quote date with a friend, like whether we have coffee or whether we go to dinner or I just call them on the phone because for me, I know personally that my personal psychology is so driven by interactions with other people. I'm a social person. And because I don't work outside of the home anymore, if I don't have those touch points with my friends or my sisters throughout the week, it's like there's something missing in me. And it's such a huge, powerful part of what makes me feel good. And so I also like, just adding meaning to our lives and feeling like we have meaning to other people. Like nothing feels better, excuse me, than getting a text or getting a call from a friend and just knowing that you're on someone's mind. So I love all that. Thank you for sharing that. And then no pun intended, love. But Olivia, let's get to the loneliness part because you mentioned that loneliness is predictive of premature death. As much so as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So that's a huge implication, especially I know we talk about it a lot with older adults, but what about all of us, right? I think that love and connection is powerful for all of us. I know that as we get older, we get more isolated, and so it becomes very powerful to avoid dementia and so forth. But tell me about that whole loneliness being similar to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yeah, there's been a big push when we're thinking about public policy and creating systems of connection. The United States Surgeon General in 2023 pretty much created this statement that said, hey, we need to start focusing on social connection because a lot of the research that's coming out about it is essentially arguing that when we look at the data, that loneliness is pretty much equivalent to or more dangerous than smoking about 15 cigarettes a day. Same thing when we look at like alcohol consumption and physical inactivity, that being socially isolated is more likely to be related to premature mortality, which is just really powerful to think about, but also, when we're thinking about changes that people want to make, a lot of the pushes have been to like educate people on the detrimental effects of social isolation, and then to educate people on how they can create more connection. Because I don't know about you, when I reflect on the research in the stress literature, a lot of the stress literature for the longest time was talking about how, okay, stress is really bad for us. Let's, do our best to avoid it. And, that's kind of it. And now more research is essentially coming out that's saying, okay, well, that's not necessarily as helpful as maybe instructing people how to develop a healthier relationship with stress, right?
Yes.
So talking about how stress can be beneficial in some ways, how stress is a normal part of our everyday lives, but certainly educating on different types of stress and how people can almost use it to their advantage, right? Thinking about stressors as a challenge that they can overcome. And for me, something like positivity resonance, and I understand that I've talked about it quite a bit, but I haven't necessarily defined it. Positivity resonance is one of the more recent theories of describing like what is love. There have been quite a few different theories out there. They've really evolved over time, but this theory essentially argues that love is an in-person experience but it's a momentary experience. It's fleeting. It can come and go. And there are three characteristics of it. One is shared positive affect, and this could be between two or more people, right? So, if I were in a group sharing in a positive affect. Another one is carrying nonverbal synchrony. So this has also been described as similar body language. So if I am one of them could be like walking together with someone or engaging in physical activity with someone. Or if their head is tilted to the side, is my head tilted to the side? If they're leaning into a conversation, am I leaning into the conversation? And then the third one is synced at the level of physiology. So I kid you not, the literature says, are their hearts beating in rhythm? Which I don't know about you. I have no idea if I'm engaged in conversation with someone and my heart is beating in rhythm with theirs. But another way they describe it is the brain, how similar parts of the brain might be lighting up, which makes sense because if you're in conversation with someone or you're watching the same things, you're probably having similar parts of the brain light up in that conversation. And the theorists of love argue that these are the three characteristics of a high quality interaction, also referred to as a momentary experience of love or positivity resonance. And to me, this is a really powerful and empowering concept because it kind of puts aside, requiring certain relationship types to give and receive love. Because it essentially argues, Angie, as you mentioned, we could go to the grocery store and have this really high quality interaction. And that could be a loving moment that could potentially affect my health and well-being. Yes. Versus, the conversation is quite different depending on someone's life circumstances. For example, for myself, I'm currently not in a romantic relationship. I live in California, but most of my family is on the East Coast. Now, I promise I have friends out here, but the common sources of love that people might think of, I don't have direct access to, right? But for me, creating loving moments, I'm not limited to that according to this theory, where again, I could go walking through my neighborhood and, wave to a neighbor and maybe it creates some sort of small talk with my neighbor. And that has the ability to have an effect on my health and well-being. So for me, this is kind of, that's a really empowering approach and a really empowering way to educate people that, thinking about it one high quality experience at a time, and how we can essentially lean into these moments anywhere.
Well, and I think that that's important that you shared all that, Olivia, because to your point, not everyone out there has a partner right now and has that quote traditional form of love. And also, let's be very frank. I mean, even if you have a partner, even if you have a lifelong partner, it doesn't mean that the health of that relationship is what everyone would want it to be. So, and I say that just to say that we can get that positivity resonance. We can get that feel good feeling by daily interactions with other people. I also, when I was writing that out, when I was writing out what you were saying about positivity resonance, you said that any in-person experience and there's a shared affect. So both people are enjoying being there. Both people feel the love, if you will, in the moment of sharing that experience together. And then also you mentioned like similar body language, and it's interesting. I don't know when you watch couples walk by and so forth, I feel like you can determine who is super connected, or even girlfriends when they're laughing and talking versus both of them on their phones. I think that all of those things signify, to your point, that we don't have to have, and this is what I really wanted you to get to today, we don't have to have traditional partnership to feel love and to experience love and to have the health benefits of love. And I feel like there was something else that you mentioned, Olivia, that I really want to tap into. In our world, we're so used to telling people the negative effects if you don't sleep well, the negative effects if you have too much stress in your life. But seldom do we twist or spin the narrative and say, how about we stop shaming people? Obviously, I know it's not good if I don't sleep. Obviously, I know it's not good if I stress too much. Obviously, I know it's not good if I don't eat the right foods. But what if you gave me a reframe and you said, and you know what else is even amazing is that if you mitigated that stress or you balanced that stress by having interactions with girlfriends, or you balance the bad food by making sure that you also get proper nutrients. I'm not saying that it erases stress or that it erases the bad decisions of the food that we're making, but gosh, it sure makes a powerful difference. And I think that that's what you're saying here. Let's teach people how to be social and the benefits of being social instead of scaring the life out of them. Because believe me, I've read before I had you come on here, I read a lot of information about basically why we should all be partnered. And I'm like, no, I call BS on that, right? I think that there's a lot of reasons why we can get that sense of partnership and that sense of connection through other ways than romantic relationships. But before I turn the mic back to you, Olivia, I want to do a quick reset. So I'm Angie Miller, and this is Strong Mind, Strong Body, and we're talking about love as medicine. Probably one of my favorite topics to talk about because who doesn't want to talk about love? I find myself getting excited and smiling just thinking about it. And my guest is Olivia Ellis, and she's a PhD student in positive psychology doing a lot of research on love. So, Olivia, you just tapped into loneliness and how we can mitigate loneliness by having these social interactions. And I find, like, for those of you out there who have animals, every morning when I walk my dog, every evening when I walk my dog, I run into neighbors. I have feel good conversations with my neighbors. And I'm like, oh, there, I filled my bucket. Right. So, um, before we move on, Olivia, is there anything you want to say about that? That I might have, I don't want to move on too quickly if there's something more you want to add to that.
I really appreciated that you brought up even quality of relationships, because when we're thinking about behaviors and how, if someone is in a romantic relationship and, but again, emphasizing what you were saying, that feelings of connectedness can also come from other sources. That even if someone is in a romantic relationship, the quality of that relationship can have a variety of effects on whether someone's adhering to a particular health behavior. So one intervention that looked at couples and trying to create essentially a game plan to increase physical activity levels, there was some moderate evidence when when couples were creating a program together for one person to increase their physical activity levels. But what was interesting is that when relationship satisfaction was low and couples created the game plan together, it was actually related to a decrease in physical activity for that person. And when you compare that also to individuals who, again, in those relationships where relationship satisfaction is low, if someone was to create a physical activity program on their own, separate of their partner, that would be related to an increase in their physical activity levels. So, we have these differences even when we're doing interventions that target these health behaviors. We can't necessarily assume if someone is in a partnership that, that the quality of the relationship is high, and therefore the interventions that we would do for an individual might be different, even if we're looking at how a couple might support.
Yeah, I think that's really important to tap into because again, just because we are in a relationship doesn't mean it's a quality relationship, and we can still get our fill from other ways of or other interactions with other people. So I know that love research, to your point, is kind of still in its infancy. Are there any controversial areas or findings that you think challenge our conventional understanding of love? I mean, I know you've mentioned a couple because, again, we've already dispelled this belief that you have to be in a romantic relationship. And I wish they would do more research about that because, truthfully, many people in our society have chosen to be single. I mean, research on millennials choosing not to get married, choosing not to have kids. Instead of shaming and saying, oh, they should be doing this, how about just giving them some profound research that says you don't have to do things the way we've always done them? So, are there any other things that challenge conventional wisdom about love?
Yeah, this theory is, I would argue, is still in its infancy. It's a relatively new theory, and it essentially argues that love can only be an in-person experience and only between people currently. But other literature that's out there talks about how, as you mentioned, animals can be a source of love, right? So, in research that I was a part of, and research that my advisor did, we essentially the question was essentially asked of, what do you think the general population views as loving? And one of the scenarios that, when people came to a consensus, a shared agreement of what they viewed as loving, one of the top scenarios was, an animal running up to see them. Okay, well, now we, according to this literature, okay, people think that most other people think an animal running up to see them is loving, but it's not necessarily part of this new theory. So certainly there are some things to be worked out. But for the most part, it's definitely a big step in the direction of, okay, high quality interactions matter. And there are interventions that people can do to really focus on these high quality interactions, such as two interventions that have been shown to be positive is one, if I were to wake up in the morning and I set a goal of 3 high quality interactions throughout the day. Very similar to what you're talking about, Angie, right? You've actually built it in your system to contact people. So I'm going to focus on 3 really high quality interactions throughout the day. Or if at the end of the day, I simply reflect on my day and I look for those high quality interactions, and how that's been shown to be beneficial.
So, it's interesting is I have a couple of sisters who health-wise aren't doing so well. And I have been I go through my periods where I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need these people in my life. These are people that I've grown up with. And so the other day, I sometimes will, well, I'm a big journaler, and sometimes I decided I should just do some gratitude journaling. And I wrote down how many interactions I had had literally throughout the week, how many times I had gotten together with a friend, how many phone calls I had made, even down to the text of how many times I had received texts from somebody that I cared about. It really made me shift my inner narrative on, yes, it is terribly sad to lose people. And yes, there are other things in your life. And yes, you can make the most of your time with the people that you care about right now. But really, what it did was made me want to make the most of the time that I have with people right now. And also to really tap into how much am I making an effort to connect with other people. And so I guess what you're saying is I'm already doing it and I'm putting into practice. And I think it makes a big, big difference, because if you set an intention to reach out with people and make sure you have connection every day, I think it can be very, very powerful. So, yay! I'm glad that I'm on the right path and that you're giving people tools that they can do, that they can kind of intersperse love, if you will, into their lives.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about what y'all are going through, and I'm sending my absolute best. And it really, when you're talking about reaching out to people, how we reach out to people could also be different. So the U.S. Surgeon General also has a challenge. It's called 5 for 5, and it says essentially for the next 5 days, reach out to at least one person every day. And when we say reach out, it could be, reaching out and saying, hey, I'm really grateful for this thing that you've done for me, or you did for me 10 years ago. But it could also be reaching out for support, saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, and contacting someone in that capacity as well.
Yeah. I think that that's important, and I think that sometimes when people get very lonely or they're going through a really bad time, they're always afraid of burdening people. The number one thing that I hear from clients is, I will say, "Who's your support system?" They'll tell me, and then I'll ask, "Have you shared this concern?" "No, I don't want to burden them." And often I then kind of use some techniques to kind of help them to get to this idea that what if you're not burdening people by sharing what's going on in your world? What if, in fact, your vulnerability is inviting them to be vulnerable and that you're creating a deeper connection? And that oftentimes people get so caught up in their own stuff that hearing about the fact that other people are going through stuff, not because misery loves company, but because then they know, hey, you know what? They're reminded everybody goes through stuff in this world and everybody goes through difficult situations. So I think that's good. I think we too often worry about burdening people when in fact people are probably on standby going, I wish she would open up to me. I can tell there's something going on or whatever it might be. So Olivia, I have another question for you. If love is kind of a health behavior, and if we can improve the health behavior, and we know that doctors are now saying, hey, you should try exercise because exercise is really good for you. Do you foresee that in the future we might have love interventions? I know you're saying that the Surgeon General is already putting stuff out there, but could we have love interventions that might be a standard plan of treatment for us in the future?
Totally. And this has started to be a recommendation to get physicians on board and our entire healthcare. That also means getting more recognition when it comes to, even insurance, right? How, as part of our health insurance, it should be built in that people are the ability to seek out social connection. So they're trying to get physicians on board, and then also, even at the level of public policy, also trying to get, thinking about, okay, well, where are places people are going? Well, school systems, right? So what can school systems do to create more connection within their curriculum, right? Through partner activities. Same thing with workplace environments. What can leaders in workplace environments do to create more workplace connection? Because, and it's beneficial for everyone. It's yes, it's important for an individual, for their health and well-being, and to be potentially a prescription for an individual and their health and well-being. But it's even beneficial for workplace environments because when people describe that they feel more connected to others, they take less time, take fewer sick days, right? So they're more engaged in their workplace. And so it's really kind of a win across the board for everyone. But certainly there have been made arguments for physicians having it be a part of their prescription and educating physicians on the benefits of social connection.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is I was just at my daughter and I just took a weekend getaway and we went to this lovely resort and I was kind of talking about how they had set up social stations, if you will. I know that's not what it's called, but how they rearranged the furniture to create an environment where people would connect and gather in groups. And I was telling my daughter that some years ago, I was at an event and I met a gal who is basically an interior designer, but her job is to travel the globe and go to these hotels and to build, to design their rooms, to design their big areas where people are inspired to stay put, to sit down, to socialize, to have a coffee, to play cards, because they know that when they create that in a hotel or we're in one of those situations, basically what they're doing is sending the message that it's a friendly environment and they're encouraging people to gather. When people gather, people buy food. When people gather, people buy drinks. So it benefits the hotel, but it also creates a warm atmosphere of inclusivity. And so I thought, what a fascinating job just to go around and create these spaces where people are inspired to gather. And sure enough, my daughter and I each night sat out in this open area and just observed people and talked to people as they walk by. So whoever had designed it well because it inspired us to do that. So, Olivia, is there anything else about love um, as medicine or as human beings, or anything that I didn't ask you about that you think, gosh, Angie, we have to say this before we close this show?
I think we did a pretty good dive into like really high quality interactions, positivity, resonance, and it's important to also understand that there are different theories behind love as well. And so if people are interested, just keeping in mind that we're skimming the surface. And so there can be a lot more information to dive into if they're interested.
I agree. And one last thing I would say, I would have to say that there being a sense of mutuality or a sense of positivity from an interaction, I think is in the eye of the beholder. So for some people who might be more introverted, walking the dog and saying hello to the neighbors might be their fill for the day. For someone like you and I, it may be that we feel like we need to go have dinner with our girlfriends. So don't you think it's also kind of in according to the individual and what fills their bucket and what their needs are?
I think that's a great point. Yeah. And a lot of this research, it is partly a subjective experience, and feelings of loneliness and isolation can also be subjective. So I think that's a really good point. So for each individual, it's also why it might be challenging to say everyone should do this, every single day to achieve XYZ benefit, because, it might not be realistic for someone, or it might cause greater feelings of stress, trying to reach for a certain milestone or whatnot. So thinking, as we're reflecting on ourselves, if it's a goal to find more moments of connection, what would be something that would be realistic for me? Even when I was giving that guideline of, looking for 3 high quality interactions, setting a goal for 3 high quality interactions, if that seems overwhelming, what would it look like if this week I just focused on 1 high quality interaction throughout the day?
Yes, because it is so individualized. And because again, it goes back to, well, gosh, or kind of like for a while when they were talking about hugging and, oh, try to have 3 hugs a day. Well, maybe some people only want 1 hug a day. I think the biggest thing is that if you check in with yourself at the end of the day and you feel good about the touch points that you had throughout the day, then you're good. If you feel like, gosh, I think I need more because I'm missing something, then that is your sign. I think it's about listening to our intuition and listening to our own needs and honoring that we may have needs that differ from someone else. So, Olivia, thank you so much for coming on and talking about love. And thanks to all of you for joining us in this conversation. Because I don't know about you, I think love is what makes the world go round. And I think love truly is medicine. And we can get love from so many different places other than our romantic relationships. So, thank you, Olivia. And thanks to all of you for coming in and listening to Strong Mind, Strong Body. We'll see you next week.